We're back. It's another RomaPress podcast. We hope you are doing well. Obviously, so much to get to. As we warned all of you, sometimes you just have to be patient. Patience is a virtue. And look, even though none of you were patient, even sometimes we get impatient, it paid off, at least in this one time. Before we get into the arrival of Mr. Dovbyk, we want to thank our two newest patrons over at Patreon, Thomas McCrae and John Forte. Fantastic surname. We thank you both for your support. If you would like to join, get early access to episodes, get whatever version of the mugs I'm going to do by ripping off, I won't say ripping, well, no, ripping off the official IS Roma store. You can go to patreon.com/Roma, press to join. And of course, if you could subscribe, like, all of that YouTube stuff at IS Roma Press, we would greatly appreciate it. I appreciate it. See, I can barely speak because I am running on, or the previous two evenings, Andy, about 5 to 6 hours of sleep, primarily because of which this guy, I hesitate to even call him an agent, but for all intents and purposes, he is registered as an agent. Um,
On the last episode, you called him a clown, so I don't think this is going to make it.
Listen. So I have, of course, talking about the agent of Artem Dovbyk. Unless you are just waking up from a coma now, and the first thing you decided to do was listen to this podcast or watch the video version of the podcast, which something has gone so terribly wrong. If this is like the first few things that you do post coma, the coma may have even been in a better state than having to subject yourself to this day in and day out. But if this is indeed the first thing you are hearing post coma, Roma, they have agreed to a deal, and they are getting Artem Dovbyk. He is already in the Italian capital. He arrived at Ciampino airport earlier today, which is Thursday. We are recording this Thursday evening. Deal is done. 39 million euros. This thing, Andy, it came about quickly. It came about, I would say, and you mentioned this on the last episode, relatively unforeseen. It seemingly went from Roma are interested in Dovbyk to, Roma have struck a deal with Dovbyk. I have to say, the early signs of Florent Ghisolfi are about as good as you could possibly have ever hoped for. Now, because I have been spending more time on Twitter, I've been trying to make a conscious effort to find my way back onto there in recent days and actually get my head out of my backside and start.
I saw, but those attempts were rather timid, John. I saw your attempts, but they were quite timid.
Well, they are timid because it's, for instances like this. Like I was on a very, very, very small radio yesterday. Like when the deal was agreed upon, I was on there for about half an hour, and then I come back, and the first thing I get, because all I did was put a bell to sort of just signal the thing I reported some days ago about Dovbyk. He and his agent pushing for the deal to get done on Tuesday, when Ghisolfi flew to Spain to hold talks with Girona. I think I tweeted about half an hour after his agent told to everybody, yeah, it's done. Because, of course, that's what he did. For those of you who this is sort of like an inside, behind the curtain, inside baseball, I think they call it, sort of the view into things. It's not as if one person gets it and another media outlet is copying them or something. No, it's the same guy messaging it to everybody. So if you're on your phone at that exact moment, you're going to be the first one to get the news. That's all it is. So I forget which account did it, but after I was done appearing on the radio, the person told me too late. I was too late to just announce about Dovbyk, which fantastic. But I have to say, man, the way this whole thing came about, I love every single thing about it. The only thing I don't like about it is his agent. Again, love the fact he everything spilling everything to everyone. Uh, it doesn't matter how. Again, I'm convinced if he had tried, I haven't checked Roma Giallorossi, but I'm sure Marco Violi had something on it too. I mean, this guy was saying everything to everyone. If you had a pulse, I'm sure some of our patrons even messaged the guy.
The one of the local media outlets even had a photo of Ghisolfi sitting down to dinner with Dovbyk. I don't think it was just luck for a reporter of a local news outlet to be in that particular restaurant at that particular time. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think there was definitely some help from the person closest to Dovbyk, and there has to there in an age where you get these agents who sort of pick and choose what to reveal and to whom. It was quite refreshing to see this guy just being a motor mouth to basically anybody willing to listen, and saying more or less the same
Yes.
things. I mean, not really changing his line, just being very open about what the player wants, what the difference between the two clubs is,
Yes.
what's going to happen next. We knew every step of the way, and I think that also helped accelerate this deal because John, between the time when it was first reported, this interest of Roma's in Dovbyk, and the deal being closed, it was 8 days, I believe.
Incredible.
Eight
Yes.
days. It took 8 days to find an agreement for a player that 8 days ago was considered unapproachable because he was in advanced talks with Atletico, and also because the costs involved were deemed prohibitive. And instead, we find ourselves, as you said, deal is done. Dovbyk is in Rome. He's undergone his medical. He's signing his contract. 39 million. This deal will be worth. The guy will sign 5-year deal with Roma. And I must say, knowing how his agent works, I would immediately put another release clause on him right off the bat.
Yeah.
You gotta,
Yeah, it's
you
fun
gotta
on the
think
front end. Yeah, this
exactly.
is going to, unless he is here for life, just wait until the point comes.
Yeah.
Hopefully, a very long time from now, obviously,
For good reason.
when it
For good
happens on the
reason.
back end. Um, yeah. Well. Listen, I might as well just say one of the names that I want to thank because I was working, and I mentioned this to the patrons in the WhatsApp group, but there was a Spanish journalist that myself and a few others that were working with a local guy in Spain who was able to get some pretty good photos and keep us up to date on the situation. Arnau Paul is his name, so I just want to give him a little love because he was working with myself, Filippo, uh, Corriere dello Sport. He was working with, and he was nice enough to work with us on a couple of details, knowing where they were going to have dinner for example. So I want to, I want to thank him, but also I want to thank the agent of Dovbyk because it was
Oh, you sellout.
no, no, no. In all seriousness, like I
No,
do find
it's
it.
nice. It's nice because it's a murky world. I mean, you know it best. It's a really murky world, the one of agents. Because
Yes,
and especially in these big transfers, you never know what you're dealing with, right? So I think at the beginning, every one of us was scared that this news of us being interested in him was only a way for the agent to up Atletico's bid for him, and perhaps
correct.
improve their offer, improve their commissions. That was the fear. Only I think it took only like 3 days for the agent to come out again. out in the open to that Ukrainian news outlet and openly state that the thing with Atletico was dead in the water and it was all Roma now.
Yes, and listen, he does exude a bit clownish behavior. Listen, anybody who goes on their personal Instagram and is an agent and tweets out screenshots of Fabrizio Romano tweets, uh, 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 mm, I also
But
it's kind of
wasn't it adorable to see him also take a video of Dovbyk when he landed in Ciampino? The guy was basically fanboying for his client, at the airport, taking a video of him greeting the fans. 200 fans were out there lined up outside of
yeah.
Ciampino, 40 degrees Celsius outside. A scorching Thursday afternoon, and
And anybody who has been to Ciampino knows it is a shit show. If you are going there, particularly for Roma-related purposes for a player, because
because
it is
it's private
so
jets. Yeah, there it's private jets.
private, but it's so compact. It is so compact there. Very little room to operate. I mean,
Yeah,
I remember last time with Lukaku when
Romelu Lukaku.
Dan lands a plane. I mean, it looked like some sort of open air prison with the people huddled together. Insanity. So,
Yes. It was nice, it's always, again, I just want to say, it's, we live in a world where these various characters that populate the world of football. I mean, just think about Zaniolo's agent, for example. I mean,
oh,
remember that's a guy who just, built a whole narrative around his client and told stories of varying reliability to all kinds of news outlets, and he constantly kept changing the story. um, that's something I don't want. If you're gonna be open about something, be open the way
yeah,
Dovbyk's agent was. This definitely helped also, because Dovbyk's agent, I mean, in a way that puts pressure on a club, in a way that makes it clear that the player is long gone. Dovbyk mentally was long gone from Girona. He may have appeared in a friendly yesterday, but there was no way that Girona could have even tried keeping him any longer. And that
right.
message was made clear, was emphasized by the agent behaving the way he behaved. Obviously, when you're on the receiving end of it, when you're
It
Girona, that pisses
sucks.
you off. Yeah, it pisses you off because you got someone who's out there stabbing you in the back, basically, selling out. But for us, this worked, and this is why we can say, obviously there is tremendous work that was done by Ghisolfi and Souloukou, who flew there and flew back, knowing full well they had to get that player. They had to be back on that flight, private flight to Ciampino, and they couldn't come back empty-handed.
Yeah, listen, there are some things from backroom standpoint about this deal in particular that fascinate me. I did something on this some months ago about Lina Souloukou, her ever growing influence from not just the off the pitch perspective and the business perspective or a stadium perspective, but now on the pitch. I know we mentioned this probably 1 or 2 months ago. And we talked about this specifically, but I just remember so vividly when she first arrived to Roma. It was she will handle the business off the pitch things. Tiago Pinto will handle everything on the pitch, but that is no longer the case, as we can clearly see. She's having a far bigger hand into things. Uh, a lot more public facing. Now, that is something I spoke of when I did the Patreon update some months ago about Lina Souloukou. That was one thing I mentioned. I mean, we saw her, Andy, just out of nowhere, making appearances at the UEFA draw. We see her doing more interviews, being more outspoken about the stadium.
She's at
Uh,
the stadium. She's traveling with the
yes,
team.
yes. Clearly, a conscious effort was made to get her more involved. And I think once Tiago Pinto decided to leave, I always thought they were going to shift to a more cohesive model, so to speak, where you don't have this separation of on and off the pitch. But to see her growing in influence, it is interesting to see. But obviously, that doesn't take away at all what Florent Ghisolfi is being tasked with, and the fantastic job he is doing early on. Let's just listen. If you, how many days has officially he been in charge? 2 months. When did he start? The 1st of June.
Yeah,
Or-
yeah, that was he became first week of June. He became operative.
Okay, so 2 months. I am hard pressed to think. Now, obviously, I could look back on this moment in 3 months and saying, "Wow, what an idiot! How could you ever have thought that?" But no matches have been played, so I can only go on the information that I have right now. I, I, I am hard pressed to think of a more impactful, a more positive, a more successful start for a sporting director this early on. I mean, listen, there are some things in his favor that others did not have. For instance, having essentially 3 to 5 of the almost half of your top 10 most expensive guys just falling off the books. Two of uh, two of which were the most significantly burdensome in the form of Romelu Lukaku, Spinazzola, Rui Patricio. Okay, yeah, Monchi didn't have that. He didn't have that ability to do that.
Mhm. Also
But
worth noting, Rome probably he came to the healthiest, financially healthiest Roma in years.
yes.
I would even argue in a decade or so.
Oh, without a doubt. In fact, I would say perhaps even the healthiest since, do we dare say, since like maybe
Say
the
it.
first season of Pallotta. I
Okay, yeah.
mean, I always forget that guy's name who was there for like 1 year. Uh,
Benedetto.
Yes, he was there.
Very
The transitional guy, yeah.
Benedetto.
So I don't think that's a stretch at all to say that. Now, I do think again that even though this is still the healthiest, at least financially, Roma have been in some time, there was also the easing of the UEFA financial fair play restrictions. Let's be clear here. I mean, this is still, even when you look across Serie A, we're not even in the same uh, arena. We are not even in the same era as Serie A, Premier League. So when people think of this high spending, high rolling Roma, just
Not
no,
even
it's
that. Not
still
even that. We're
no.
the 6th year without Champions League. Even Bologna
Yes,
have gotten Champions League before us. Like we're right now we're in a summer where we have to compete with the likes of Bologna, where even Bologna can be like, you know what, we can go for this player, and Roma cannot because we have the prestige of being able to play in the Champions League. Like that's a fact. Like Mats
yes.
Hummels is considering Bologna just because they're playing in the Champions League, something that would have been unthinkable 2 years ago. So, the Ghisolfi walks into a situation that is far more optimal than the one I would say Tiago Pinto has faced in recent years, and before him, everybody else, because as perhaps with the exception of Monchi in that one season where everything went wrong, because just that was where it was carte blanche and Roma were still regulars in the Champions League, whatnot. Okay. But this year, we're talking about a Roma team that is transitioning, a team that is revolutionizing its squad, a Roma team that has more question marks than answers. Because guess what? Mourinho is gone, Thiago Pinto is gone, a whole idea of Roma is gone. Squad needs to be rejuvenated. Costs must be contained. Balance sheet must be straightened out. The salary has to be the salary and commissions list has to be put into some kind of context that makes it work and not overflow and then have long lasting consequences. So Florent Ghisolfi came in with well, on one hand, a clear mission to change things, because clearly it was
Yes.
not, it was unsustainable, it was financially not viable in the long run. Roma, once again, poor results given the costs of the squad, given everything that went on beforehand. At the same time, quite quite a challenging and unclear context, because what kind of manager is Daniele De Rossi? Which pieces work? Which pieces do not work? What is the direction that the coach wants to go in? What's the direction that the Friedkins want to go in? So a whole thing of lining up, of confronting yourself. Exactly, you're talking about Lina Souloukou. Lina Souloukou has the CEO title, and Florent Ghisolfi has the technical director title for a reason, because Lina Souloukou clearly shares sporting duties as well. Lina Souloukou is doing everything right now. We are surprised because that's what a CEO should be doing. I mean, Gandini, think about that. Um,
Oh, I thought you were going to mention my man who kind of
Guidofienga,
resembled Alec
Guidofienga.
Baldwin
Oh,
that liked to
Baldissoni,
uh,
Baldissoni,
no, no, the other one
Zanzi,
that looked like
Zanzi.
maybe it was him. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not
Well,
referring to anybody specifically who
okay.
liked to indulge in
Yeah, okay, John, we get
any
it.
substances or offered any to me at any point
Oh my
during a North
god.
American tour on
Okay.
an evening in 2013.
Okay. Wow.
I'm not hinting at
No.
anybody specific. There's several people at the club during that time that looked like Alec Baldwin.
Okay.
Maybe it was sabotage. Nah, I don't know. But
No,
anyway,
so no, I
yeah.
don't think. Well, anyway, but that's the truth, is that Lina Souloukou, right now she is doing what a CEO should be doing, which is basically, I mean, cover every single area of the club, make sure that everything is running smoothly. She's been doing that, because before heading to Spain with Florent Ghisolfi, joining him there, she was talking to the mayor of Rome. She was inaugurating in the name of Antonio Falchi. She was
Yes.
discussing the stadium beforehand. So with Ryan Friedkin at the council, at the city council. So all of it is that's what she's doing. So we're talking about an executive who's definitely growing in power, who is making sure the ship is sailing. And Florent Ghisolfi coming in from a completely different context, such as the one in Nice. Now that's a challenge. That's a challenge, and what he's done now, he started that thing of rejuvenating the squad. The only player over 30 right now that we got is
Yes.
Matthew Ryan, uh, Dovbyk 27, Dal Dal 21, Buba Sangare 16, Lefe 23. So we're Sule 21. We're heading in a different direction. The team is taking shape. Doesn't mean that we're world beaters again, because again the opinion sways from 0 to 100, especially in the RomaPress patron group chat. But the thing is, if there was one thing we had to do, was change. And right now we are seeing that. We're seeing the club change. Now we can talk about what Roma need to focus on now. But what we're hearing is Tammy Abraham, his position at the club is compromised. Nikola Zalewski, with only 1 year left on his contract, very unlikely to stay. Um, we have to get a new right back. Why? Because Rick Karsdorp has been excluded from the team. Rick Karsdorp has now changed agents. So that could potentially mean that he's heading somewhere soon. We have to perhaps get another defender, because, hey, guess what? Chris Smalling is once again dealing with an injury. So these are all things that we still have to address. But what we can say for a fact is that this new Roma team is starting to take shape. I know it's the 1st of August as we're recording this, but this is the moment where these things happen. People have this weird conception that as soon as the gong strikes, you're supposed to have 10 signings lined up. That's not the case. This is where it all starts getting interesting. This is where it all gets and melts into one big pot. All the teams, all the clubs in Serie A and in Europe, this is where they all come together and start to address their respective issues.
Yeah, this is something that should always be expected. Again, no matter how often we warn people, very few tend to heed our warning. Listen, now we're going to see. If this was the hot period where Roma bringing in guys, there is obviously right now, this is going to be where they begin to offload, which is what they have to do, as you said, Karsdorp, Tammy Abraham. Uh, that deal is going to be interesting. I think we're going to see some accounting gymnastics, so to speak, happen here, which is why we're seeing the likes of counterparts being discussed, being included into a deal from Milan. They have to do this now because yes, you had very important wages fall off, but now we have to worry about plus valenza, not making a minus valenza on somebody like Tammy Abraham. So we had our exciting week, so now it's time to calm down, get rid of some of the dead weight that still remains. I want to talk about though this thing with Dovbyk. We discussed it a little bit, how he may fit in the team, but I I created I want to just put this graphic up now about the just comparing Dovbyk to Lukaku, particularly their last season. Now, they're obviously Dovbyk coming off one of his best seasons, and Girona as a whole. I mean, fantastic season. They were at the top of the table in La Liga at various points during the season. This is something where, just thinking back, Andy, like top scorer in the Spanish league, the prime. I mean, this is the prime. If you could have your choice of the age, of the experience, of really any player that you're going to spend an exorbitant amount of money on, okay, this is it. He has it. Okay, he is now limited experience, as you mentioned on the last episode, in the top four leagues. We understand that, but man, when I look at his numbers from last season compared to Lukaku, I mean, it's astounding. Now, of course, there's several reasons for why a guy like Romelu Lukaku scores 13 goals in Serie A, which is, I mean, still respectable, while Dovbyk has almost double that. I mean, they both did outperform the XG, so that's good, obviously. But when it comes to Dovbyk, I am thoroughly impressed with the versatility of this guy. And I think when you compare his game to that of Romelu Lukaku, I just think the versatility he provides, I just think that adds a different dimension. Now, does that mean, what do you think now? Do you think this? Do you think De Rossi decides to continue with that? The 4-3-2-1? Does he go back? We know he'll always like the 4-3-3. Does he go the 4-2-3-1? I think we need to wait and see. But when it comes to a partnership, because I think I'm not exactly going out on a limb by saying it's going to be Sule, Dybala, Dovbyk. I have to tell you, I think that is about as good or ideal of a mixture of technical ability. Obviously, when it comes to the work rate, maybe something to be desired there. But as far as how these guys all fit together, what do you think? Because when you look at last season, now obviously, again, it's a different Roma with De Rossi versus Mourinho. But it's not as if Lukaku was scoring lights out under De Rossi, even though Roma certainly appeared far more free-flowing, so to speak, in attack under De Rossi once Jose Mourinho left. He still really had problems finding his footing. Now, again, he still had a respectable goal tally. Okay, we understand that. But I have to say, I feel like with Dovbyk, just when we're comparing those two players, because that's who Roma had as their number 9 last year, and this is who they have this season. So that's why we're comparing the two. I think Dovbyk, the way he plays, his game, I think he opens up a lot more things compared to the last season's version of Romelu Lukaku.
Well, any time you can combine a player of Dobbik's characteristics with someone like Paulo Dybala, and then you even add to that Mattias Sule, who was the sole creator for Frosinone, who had a whole bunch of guys who were part-time plumbers, still relatively running the show. I think what you said, he was responsible for a great part of Frosinone's goals and assists last season.
1/3, I believe.
Exactly.
I
So
said it in the last one, but like a third.
that's
Goal and
quite
assist.
that's quite the feat, given also
Yes.
Frosinone's entire attacking output and also ability. First of all, because as great as Eusebio Di Francesco's 4-3-3 was and is, uh, they ended up where they ended up for a reason.
Yeah.
But I do think if there is someone who can benefit from that, is Dovbyk. Dovbyk had great help at Girona. If we can let the hype overwhelm our emotions, we can also conclude that he's going to have great help at Roma too, because why shouldn't it work to have Mattias Sule and Paulo Dybala out there all at the same time together with Dovbyk? Well, these are the famous last words, because we all thought we had the same thing when Dybala joined and Zaniolo was there and Tammy Abraham and everything, and then it was just a mess. And Dybala was the only bright spot in that second year of Mourinho. But here in this case, I really do think that, you're getting a player who is in his prime, who is on an all-time confidence high, who has everything going for him after openly rejecting Atletico Madrid and making it a point to go from Girona, who play in the Champions League, going from rejecting Atletico Madrid, who play in the Champions League, going to a team that plays in Europa League, that is has been notoriously underperforming in recent years in the league. That leaves much to be desired in terms of the kind of football they played under Jose Mourinho. And for some stretches with De Rossi, we saw also glimpses of that old Roma there. But that's a statement. That's a statement that means that you are getting a player who's ready for a challenge, ready to contribute. So, for people questioning the concept of statement signing, well, this is a statement signing for Roma, because they did hijack a deal. They did push their way through. They did so they did go onto the scene much too late to everybody's perception of it. Everybody was like, what? Why? Everybody was describing it. Sky Sport was describing it as last minute attempt. Roma went for it, and they got what they wanted. They addressed this very glaring void in the squad, which was a replacement of Lukaku. And, well, they did put a nail in the coffin of Tammy Abraham at the club,
Oof.
as in a proper nail in the coffin of Tammy Abraham being considered a starter, which he's no longer considered. That's the main conclusion for me, is Tammy Abraham's fate has been sealed with this signing, because you're not bringing in some veteran who's going to be happy to share minutes. You're not bringing in Alvaro Morata like Milan did, and they're getting a player who, if needed, will do his thing and will contribute to a la Giroud. But for the most part, if there is someone happy also to work with someone else, that's Alvaro Morata. No. Dovbyk wants the ball all to himself. There's not going to be any sharing with Tammy Abraham, and Tammy Abraham rightfully wants to get back into consistent minutes after missing such a large stretch of the season in the past campaign. So to me, Dovbyk immediately pushes Tammy Abraham out, realigns Roma's priorities. So a right back, an additional midfielder, a winger, perhaps a defender if money allows. But the thing that is certain now is that Roma are going to focus on the outgoing transfers, and Tammy Abraham will be one of the first names that they will have to push out, because you just cannot have, first of all, an unhappy player and one that what weighs upon your balance sheet. What do we say last time? 14 million, something like that. So
Yes, hold on. Let
r-
me get it because I mean, it is. If we just want to talk about burdensome, I mean, nobody uh, really comes close to how heavy Tammy Abraham weighs onto the books of Roma. It is kind of sad in a way because the way we feel of Dolbeck right now is, if you remember, if we want to go back in time, somewhat similar. Because remember, Tiago Pinto, he flies to London, he goes to Roma's
But
rather.
Come on, yeah, but Tammy Abraham, yes, as in when you describe, yes, the fashion in which Thiago Pinto went in. Remember, Edin Dzeko leaves the club. Roma have Tammy Abraham done and dusted in 7 days. That's how long it took to get everything started and finished.
Yes,
And there was a blitz in London for him, but Tammy Abraham was coming in as a promise, or as rather a player
right.
who was still to be unlocked. Dovbyk has been unlocked. Dovbyk, yes, he may have played for smaller teams in the past. He may have played in Ukraine, in Denmark, sure. But Dovbyk last season in a very competitive La Liga, he's unlocked. He's scoring goals left and right. He's showing he is a leader. He's showing he is a powerful presence to lead the team. Tammy Abraham has done anything but show those things in his limited minutes after returning from injury. It's not even, I'm one of the Tammy Abraham fans. I do think that in his
Yes,
second year, he was really, really difficult to watch. I think when he came back from
horrible.
the
Yeah,
injury, there was too much pressure on him. He put too much pressure on himself, and he was horrendous. And so I in fairness to him, he deserves more minutes, but he deserves them elsewhere, because this Roma team cannot go on making the same mistakes as they've done in the past. Keeping Tammy Abraham, keeping him unhappy on the bench, costing the team a lot of money, would be one of those mistakes. And I do believe that Roma will do everything in their power to right it.
yeah, and they have to. Listen, I like Tammy Abraham, as you said. That second season was. I will never forget some of the misses that guy had. Do you remember that? I mean, they were so glaring. So, I mean, sitters at times where this guy you would be astounded as to how anybody could possibly miss that goal. But he does need a fresh start. Roma can't afford to wait on him. They can't. If he goes to a place like Milan, probably you get a handful of starts behind Morata. See if you can refine that form. But it just now you for how much he weighs on the books of Rome, they can't afford to just have him sitting there waiting, and they can't afford to be patient with him. It's the unfortunate reality as to how much they paid for him. This is the result. If a guy like that gets hurt, it's a blow to everyone. Um, with just going back to this Dolbeck thing very quickly before we end this here, I'm still astounded because again, it does have sort of that air as to the blitz that Thiago Pinto did. He goes to Roma's office is in London. He lands, and he and Jose Mourinho, they're trying all this time to convince Tammy Abraham. I have to tell you, though, because one of the things that bothered me about this deal with Dovbyk from a reporting standpoint was, we know Ghisolfi is going to Spain, and then he lands on Tuesday. He's there. And then they're meeting Ghisolfi, Girona, Roma, his agent. I mean, they met for hours and hours, and then it was Roma said it to like Sky Sport and I believe Sport Italia. They were saying, "Well, no, we didn't have any meetings. We're meeting with them Wednesday." And Di Marzio, he goes on his television program and he says, they it was only Roma and his agent met today. The clubs will meet tomorrow." And then Wednesday comes and the deal was done like within minutes during the day. So it's just no. Everything was done on Tuesday. Everything was done on Tuesday. What? Do you think Ghisolfi already was going to, book a flight leaving there empty-handed on Wednesday? No, come on. Let's be serious. That just him going there, getting it done, and then coming back just over 24 hours later. It's especially a deal of this magnitude, Andy. It's one thing if it's a deal for Baldanzi or something, and even that was expensive. But I mean, the absolute commitment of the guy. And by the way, I just love the thing of him showing up at the airport. Can I just say that? I think Monchi did that too, if I'm not mistaken. He did that for Cristante. You remember that? Remember
He did.
how
I don't remember
Ramon?
anything with Cristante.
Okay, all right.
It's a blur. It's a
Okay,
blur.
well, Ramon Monchi, because if you remember, this was, I think, the only thing I even have the modicum of respect for him for during his time at Roma, notwithstanding the fact he misspelled my name incorrectly for 2 straight years.
No,
J
I do remember.
H
I do
O
remember him
N.
going to grab Santon at the airport.
That maybe it was
It
Santon.
was
I
Santon, John. It
it was
wasn't
okay.
Cristante. It was Santon. Cristante at the time of his signing was a big deal, but Santon
Yes,
came in as this counterpart, nonsensical counterpart in the deal for Nainggolan,
for
and
Zen. Yeah,
everybody was
yes.
angry, and Monchi just went out there to get him, give him some confidence. Well, it worked, I think, for like 5 games, and then it wore
Yeah,
off.
yeah, it was, yeah, yeah.
Speaking of
That
fullbacks, just to end it here, because I just wanted to tie the room together. You could say the same things that you just said about Tammy Abraham. You could say them about Nikola Zaleski. Um, a
yes,
guy who needs the minutes, a guy who costs you, a guy who has no future at the club. It's quite evident that it's not going to work with someone. Gone are the days of the jolly. And unfortunately, Nicola
yeah.
Zaleschi at Roma became a jolly, and one that is not good at anything, like the history of most jollies at Roma goes.
Jack
And
of all trades,
Jack of
master
all
of
trades,
none.
exactly. With
Come
only
on.
1 year left on his contract, Zaleski is also. These are him and Abraham. I think keep your eyes open, because if there are pieces that are going to be moved, those are the two main ones that could help you then on later on in your investments before the end of the summer. Those are the two names where you can make not a lot of money, but some money.
Even if it's only a few million euros, you're going to make up everything on him, everything above. It is all plus valenza, because obviously they come from the academy. You grow. They came from your youth team, so you're going to make a lot on them. This thing with Zaleski, you said it. I think you were one of the first to notice this, but when you just see him play for Poland versus Roma, there has never been more of a clear sign that it is just not going to happen here. Um, unfortunately, because he seems like a nice guy. Um, Never have I doubted his professionalism. He has a very good temperament. He's not a pain in the backside. He's just not. I can't tell you to this day. It's been what, 3 seasons of him, 2 seasons of him. I can't tell you his position. Neither can you. I don't know his best role on the pitch. I,
No way of knowing. No way of
it,
knowing here. No way of knowing here.
no,
De Rossi even tried him in a more offensive role, because that's where he excelled at with Primavera. It's just a matter of him not being compatible with this place anymore. It happens. It's
Yes.
unfortunate when it happens to a product of the academy, but that's what happened to Alessandro Florenzi, for example. I'm not going to go
Yes.
out and say that Florenzi
Don't.
played
Yeah.
amazing for other clubs. Perhaps his more decent playing was for Milan in a limited role during their Scudetto run. But
Yes.
otherwise, we're talking about players who are shot in confidence and who have very little to give Roma. This is not the season where you can afford to have such players on the roster taking up space. Nicola Zalewski, 1 year left on his contract. It's time to go, pal.
I couldn't agree more. Hopefully people learn from the thing with Florenzi about we can't just hold on to them because they're Romanista, they're from the city. No, nope, not enough of a reason. Not enough of a reason. We will leave it there. Dovbyk to Roma, very exciting. We got our week full of transfer market action. Now we can now you can have your fill. There is still 1 month remaining. It's out of the way though. Don't expect much. The exciting part is over with. Now, thankfully, now you can go and begin to concentrate on the season. Because remember, Romelu Lukaku, you don't get your number 9 until the third match of the season with Milan. Well, now that's not the problem. Now that's not a problem. He's going to have almost 3 full weeks to prepare with Roma, to prepare under De Rossi. Couldn't really ask for more. Ghisolfi, I'm so impressed. All right, we'll be back in a few days. Until next time, everyone. Ciao.